Ladies and gentlemen, we have a You Killed It first. We
Ooh.
have, we have actually produced the show. We actually had, dare I say, a 30-minute conversation about what we were going to talk about. We actually have some structure. We have a plan. This is history in the making, people. I'm John Shidley Hill.
Now I'm nervous that I'm just gonna like mess it all up. I am Sheldon Alexander.
And this is You Killed It, the podcast talking about the challenge. I'm just going to start off with a simple question. Sheldon, how was your weekend?
You know what's funny, John? Sometimes you just wake up in the morning and all of a sudden your mentions are just kind of going. And sometimes you'll know that it's because of something that you've done or tweeted or did the Raps make a trade or something going on? And no, none of that happened. So I was like, wait, what's going on? And I looked at my mentions and I saw that a cast member of the challenge decided that she wanted to add us.
Yeah.
Wow, right?
Michelle was not very happy with us in our last episode of the podcast. And I will say some background.
Mm-hmm.
This is not the first time a cast member of the challenge has been unhappy with us. It happens.
Here's the thing, right? Like we come on here, and I think our longtime listeners understand this. We come on, we do this for fun. This is jokes, right? This is two friends who enjoy a television show and enjoy talking about said television show and enjoy the community that we have that also enjoys said television show. And we congregate each and every week to discuss what's going on said television show and add in jokes along the way about other random Canadian facts and whatever else piques our mind from week to week. Now, in terms of the show, like it's not that serious. It's a reality show, right? Like it's all here, it's all jokes, but same time, I understand some people, it becomes a little more serious, right? I understand you're talking about real people and sometimes people might not like what you have to say, but at the same time, who wants to listen to a pod where you just like everybody? Like that doesn't seem authentic to me, right? I'm not saying, and I don't think that we crush people other than Josh, but like, I don't think that we actively like just crush people for no reason and like are even malicious in things that we say about people. I think it's all just like within fun. And literally our conversation last week was about being on Team Laurel. Do you know what I mean? Like it wasn't even that big of a deal in terms of being like, oh, Michelle sucks, she's the worst or whatever.
I also have to point out, in the past, it was a couple of years ago, but we once got lit up on, first of all, agreeing with each other too much and being too nice.
Oh.
Like people have also criticized us for being like, oh, you never say anything bad about anyone. So like it goes to show you can't please everyone.
So hold on. We're 3 minutes into this and I just realized there's probably people listening to this right now that have no idea what we're talking about.
Well, fill them in.
So we should explain. Let's start here. Okay.
Start at the beginning.
Let's start at the beginning, right? So obviously this is, You Killed It pod as mentioned. This is what? Episode 21, which is the second reunion episode of the Challenge Rider Dies. You Killed It episode 247. On last week's episode, we were recapping what happened in part 1 of the reunion of the Challenge Rider Dies. And we spent some time discussing one of the clips, which I will play right now just for context so that everyone knows or understands that we are on the same page here. And, we're doing this live. So, I mean, hey, if it doesn't happen like perfectly, then get mad at someone else because, unpolished, unapologetic, right? This is what we say all the time on this pod. So deal with it, people. But we will play this clip from last week, the first episode of the reunion. We'll play this clip right now, okay? Okay, so that's where that starts. And again, that is from last week's reunion episode, right? Laurel versus Michelle. And we had the discussion on our podcast about how, I think the question was simple as, are you Team Laurel or Team Michelle? And we discussed that we were Team Laurel, right? Laurel, for as flawed as she is, for as rude as she is, for as, in your face as she is, she owns it. Right. And
Yeah.
I feel, and we talked about this last week. We thought that Michelle just kind of like tap dances around and then kind of plays the victim and this, that, and the third. I didn't think we said anything too reckless or too bad or whatever. And then to my point, I wake up the next morning, right? And as I wake up the next morning, as now, obviously, as I'm trying to find the tweet, obviously now I've messed that up and, unpolished, unapologetic as we keep rolling here on this pod. But here's what happens next, okay? Wake up the next morning and magically, John, there's a tweet. And the tweet is from, I guess we'll start here. It's from longtime listener, Trina. And Trina says, my fave challenge pod, but at J Chidley Hill, at Shell Alexander, being Team Laurel when she acted like a child at the reunion makes me sad. Michelle was chaotic entertainment, so I want her back, but I can do without more Jay. Okay, cool. Shouts to Trina, always writing in, giving her comments on the pod. We appreciate that. Harmless. We're allowed to disagree, right, John? People can disagree with us.
And also, Trina, I think, like, she wasn't hating on us. She's not saying that she's going to stop listening to the podcast.
No.
We also, like, are in agreement. We also don't want Jay back. Right? Like, there's common ground here.
Yes.
And, like, I think Trina also acknowledges that Michelle brings a certain chaotic energy, which can be entertaining. And, like, the Michelle plot lines, if you will, of the season were entertaining. Like, Michelle and Jay for like 4 or 5 episodes were the straw that stirred the drink of the show.
Mm-hmm. And so for the people who might be listening to this pod, we're reading tweets, we're playing clips, but there's also a video element to this where we are showing said tweets, showing the video evidence of all of this that we're talking about. And of course, if you happen to be watching on YouTube or Twitch, bless with the like, bless with the share. We're adding a visual element to all this to kind of liven up this conversation. But we mentioned Trina's tweet. Cool, no problem. Trina tweets us every once in a while, lets us know what's going on. But here's the thing, because right below Trina's tweet, there's a blue check mark. And it's from Michelle Fitzgerald. Yes, and it says, it's adding all of us, Trina, John, and myself. And it says, spent half the episode talking about how much I suck with a crying, laughing emoji and a trash can. Time to find a new favorite podcast, honey. Michelle off the top ropes. Like, I felt like, whoa, what just happened here? Trina wasn't coming at us. I didn't even think we were coming at Michelle. But Michelle, now, first off, did we spend half the episode talking about her?
No.
So that is not true. Also, I don't think we spent that much time talking about how much she sucked. I thought we were more bigging up Laurel, but hey, we'll leave that to other people. You can have your own opinions. Cool. I mean, we clearly weren't fans of Michelle, but again, that's okay. Time to find a new favorite podcast. Why are you trying to turn people off of the pod, Michelle? I don't know. But anyways, I messaged John right away. Full disclosure. I messaged John and I messaged our guy LT. And I was like, I'm going to be honest here. I'm going to be honest. If I'm nothing but honest, I'm Sheldon Alexander. I said to you guys, I'm like, I'm going to respond to this and I'm going to try to like, just not be super petty, but I'm also like, there's part of me that just wants to crush her. Cause like, what are you doing right now? But I said, you know what? I'm not going to be mean. I'm going to try not to be mean to her. I'm just going to try to come up with the clever way to respond. Right. And so what I thought I was doing, what I did was I decided to respond to Michelle's tweet and I was going to quote tweet it. And here's what I decided to say to our friend Michelle. Okay. I thought, John, that this was, appropriate. And if you remember back to the clip that we played for you earlier, some of this might sound familiar. So what I tweeted was, this hurts, but I get it. You had other shit going on that gave an energy at the reunion. Then you warmed up to other pods and you never re-warmed up 2-hour pod. And maybe that's perception, but perception is reality, right? You cook things up in your head and they're not real. That's it. That's all I said to Michelle.
So
I thought, okay, yeah.
I'm just gonna cut in here, just from my perspective on what's going on.
Okay.
First of all, I thought this was hilarious because, like, obviously, you're just paraphrasing Michelle back at her about what she said to Laurel.
Correct.
I thought that was very funny. I laughed when I read it. But the other thing, and like, I mean, perception is reality, but like something that I think people don't understand about our dynamic, you and I, is that, in my opinion, and you can disagree, you're the nicer of the two of us. And I am certainly the more hot-headed.
Okay.
Like, I think I'm pretty funny. I'm pretty optimistic. I'm pretty outgoing. I'm generally pretty kind, but I think I have a worse temper than you. Like, I go 0 to 100 much faster than you do typically. You typically are the voice of reason between the two of us. But this Friday morning at 11:30, I was driving a car because I was going up north glamping for the weekend.
Ooh.
And in preparation for that, in preparation for glamorous camping and getting away from the hectic lifestyle, I had deleted Twitter from my phone before Trina's tweet.
Oh.
So my window into this world was just you, Sheldon. And it also meant that it saved us from my very reactionary temper because I had no immediate way of weighing into the fray. I wouldn't have consulted you. I wouldn't have consulted LT. I would have just fucking shot from the hip. So just from my perspective, it was kind of fortunate, the timing, just for me personally, just for the John Chidley Hill brand.
Yeah.
I was out of commission from this whole thing, which is why I never replied. Because by the time I got back in the city, it was in a place to tweet. I'm like, Sheldon said enough. I've cooled off. I don't need to weigh in on this. I had thoughts that I was going to tweet, but because I'd already like committed to this action, my proverbial gun remained holstered while you went out there for the team.
So a couple things, right? Like, one, I appreciate that. And I appreciate you and I appreciate LT because you guys both allowed me to have a moment of thought, right? Because my initial reaction was just to go at her. And then I realized, like, really, it's not that serious. It's the internet, it's Twitter. Like, this is silly. Like, what is happening here, right? Like, this isn't that serious. So instead, I was like, okay, I need to respond to her, but I want to be funny. I want it to be tongue in cheek. But I realized after, and like, two things. I'm all about, so we talk a little bit about what we do for a living here, right? What I used to do a lot is I used to write like the opening headlines or the coming ups for our nightly sports shows here in Canada. And one of the things that I used to love doing was trying to just fit in Jay-Z lyrics into whatever we were doing for no reason at all, other than for the amusement of me and maybe like the 10% of people at home that would understand, Derek Jeter coming up. He made the Yankee hat more famous than any Yankee did. Derek Jeter and the Yankees take on whatever. The 10% of people at home that are like, or 1% of people at home that are like, oh, hey, I see what you did there. That's what I live for. So with this, I knew that this was going to go over a bunch of people's heads, but I didn't really think about the people who had no idea. Like, there's a bunch of people that follow me for the Raptors, right? So they were going to read this tweet and have literally no idea who Michelle is, what we're talking about, but me just saying this hurts, but I get it. And them thinking that this is somewhat real. So I didn't think of any of that, right? And I just kind of let it go without an explanation, which was also just like maybe a misstep on my part, but also I didn't really care. Like, I thought it was just hilarious.
Again, sorry to interrupt, but just again, showing like how reactive a person I am and how hard a time I have seeing the consequences of my action. None of what you said had occurred to me until a week later. Like, until you said it, it hadn't even occurred to me that there'd be people following you and I that have no idea the context of this. Like, that's how reactionary I am. So once again, thank you.
Yeah, I thought about it, like, because I don't know what's the next tweet on my timeline, but it's probably like, what a play by Pascal Siakam or something like that, right? So imagine those people following me and they're like, wait, hold on, what is he talking about? Is he arguing with this? Like, who's Michelle? Is that like an ex? Like, is this some like relationship thing? This hurts, but I get it. You had other things going on. Like, it's just so funny to think about it out of context. But anyways, my point remains. The people that got it, I expect the people that watch the show, I expected them to get it and at least like have a chuckle, not find it the best. I'm not some comedy writer, but at least have a chuckle. And instead, what ended up happening was Michelle decided to respond, right? And do I have it up here somewhere? Did I send it to myself? Yeah, I do have it here. Michelle decided to respond. And what Michelle responded with, which I find very funny as well, is that Michelle decided that what her move was going to be was she responded with this. She said simply, ha ha ha, aw, LMK, which let me know. Let me know when you get an original thought / opinion, and I will tune back in with the winking emoji. Then, as you can see at the bottom here, I mean, again, I'm explaining what's going on for our audio listeners. Our video listeners can see it, but you can see at the bottom, it says this tweet has been deleted because Michelle eventually deleted the tweet. And that was when it clicked to me. I was like, oh, maybe she didn't get it. Like, she didn't, like, is that true? Do you think that's a possibility that there's a world that she didn't get, that I was just like joking and like rehashing exactly what she said? Do you think that she got it?
She may not have gotten it. And then what twigged me to this was that then she'll tune back in. I guess Michelle has been listening to us.
I mean, I didn't believe that. LT brought that up to me, and I was like, I don't think I believe that Michelle listens to our pod. And not because, I feel like, we got some challenge peeps that listen to the pod that I'm not going to mention right now for a lot of different reasons. But I'll say this, I feel like there were times where if we were mean to Michelle or said something bad about Michelle, that this would have come out before, right?
Yeah,
like when the actual stuff was going on with Jay, it's not like we were saying like the best things or polite things then, right? We were just talking about how bad the gameplay was. And
we had been consistently critical of Jay and Michelle.
Yeah, bad gameplay. Nothing wrong with that. It's just the facts.
And I should also point out that some of our favorites, like people we consistently like, we've also criticized their gameplay.
Yeah, it happens. It happens. Gameplay is gameplay. So Michelle deletes a tweet, and I am just enjoying all of this because I'm like, whoa, she actually responded. But then when she deleted the tweet, I was like, wait, why did she delete it? Like, I didn't really understand why she deleted it. And there's been no real correspondence since. And I liked that tweet. I liked her other tweet. I posted the pod. She liked the pod post. And so I'm having fun with this. And then I decided to post it in, like, to peek behind the curtain. You have a podcast, you share the podcast on socials. I know we don't really like post the pod on Twitter, really. Kind of sometimes post it on Instagram stories, but again, part of the reason why we do the pod isn't to like grow the audience and like build the audience and like share and all that. Like, we know that we have different people that follow us for different things. So the challenge people are going to stumble upon us. And if you don't, that's also cool. We're not out here trying to like get rich off of talking about the challenge podcast. Do you know what I mean? Like, that's not why we do this. So one place we do post it though, is in the Reddit group. And in the challenge Reddit group, I posted there just because like you're posting it to other like-minded challenge fans, right? Like, we've gotten fans who write into us that will tell us about how they stumbled upon the pod, right? So I posted, and I thought that this was clearly a joke that people would understand, that I put Michelle versus the You Killed It podcast. Who you got? Right? I put that as the title of it. And my mistake was, what I posted was just a screenshot of my quote tweet to Michelle and then her deleted tweet. So I think, again, I thought that people who watched the challenge would have gotten what I was doing, that I just took her line against us, or her line against Laurel, and use it back against her. But I'm going to just go through and read some of the comments in the Reddit section for two reasons. One, because I find it hilarious. And two, because, like, I guess I find it really hilarious. That's the second reason. But also, like, just to show that none of this matters. It's the internet, right? Like, of all the craziness that happened with Dave Chappelle, one of the things that really resonated was when he said, the internet is not real, right? Like, these people, like, you put up things on the internet, and, like, people say dumb things all the time. And should they say the dumb things that they say? No, right? Cool. But it's also just a bot, right? Like, sometimes it's like people are just dumb.
Well, I think, Sheldon, I don't want to put words in your mouth here, but, like, I think for you, it's, you want to show that you can dish it out, but you can also take it.
Correct.
Like, you can roll with it.
Correct. So here's some comments here coming back at me here. Now, I apologize for people who might be bored of this, but let's be honest, was the reunion 2 really that funny? And again, hey, maybe you're going to send us in more comments making fun of me right now for us talking about this on this pod, but where else would we talk about it? Right? So here's a comment that says, you really thought you gagged her. Ha ha ha. Next comment. They thought they were reading her down just because they cracked a picture book. Don't even know what that means. Yeah, I don't know what this podcast is. And based on this, I don't feel the need to. Not particularly clever enough to pique my interest. More comments. Seeing as how I have no idea what the You Killed It podcast is, I don't particularly give a shit. This isn't too tough of a call. This is amazing. I tried to listen once. It's absolutely dog water. Never heard that. What a description. So seeing this man come at Michelle for making stuff up in her head while doing the same thing to her is hilarious. I don't think that person got the joke. Finding out the OP, which I guess is original poster.
Yeah.
Runs the podcast, gave me such secondhand embarrassment. Like, okay, man really tried to get, this sounds like a Toronto man's, right?
Yeah, this is
man really tried to get that Reddit validation by posting his poor comeback to Michelle. This is so embarrassing. So this person is posting their own podcast and saying, who you got? This is their way to keep the drama going, apparently. Okay. You came here to hawk your shitty podcast, and now you got buried by Michelle. Couldn't be me.
I don't know
sorry.
that we
is
got
anyone
buried.
else enjoying this as much as I am?
I don't think we got buried.
No, not at all. Not at all. That's the thing that I find so funny. It's so amazing because I don't get it. Someone says, who is Sheldon? And then the next comment says, the guy from the Big Bang Theory.
I like that one.
Podcast nobodies versus someone who's never been voted out of a season of Survivor. Tough one. That's so good. Let's see. Michelle is a queen, and the OP, we will not be listening to your podcast. Sorry, bro, but I'm always team Queen Shell.
I gotta say, Queen Shell is like a rough nickname. The first time I've ever seen Queen Shell.
Yeah. That's an interesting one. OP should have posted Michelle or me, who you got. LOL. This is good brand marketing, though. Lots of people on this sub are now learning there's a challenge pod called You Killed It.
True.
Someone says, I listened to this pod once and I was super bored. I've never listened to something so poorly done. I genuinely couldn't be that bad if I tried. Shout out to the OP for making something that most aren't incompetent enough to achieve. Okay.
It's nice to be unique, Sheldon.
Another comment. Don't gaslight her. She's a real person, not just a TV character. For the record.
Oh, you know what that was? They thought that because you were saying that they thought that because your quote tweet that you're saying that was all in her head, not realizing that you were referring to what she said.
Interesting. See, I didn't really get that, but I like that. I'm trying to find one in particular and I can't find it, but it was like, oh, so generally I never got anyone who says perception is reality. And then someone, the comment below, which just sums up the internet perfectly to me. The reply to that is, at risk of telling you what you know here, but it was a line Michelle used on the reunion. So they think they're being clever by repeating it. The next reply to that, LOL. The response is hilarious. Damn, Michelle has Reddit fans, huh? So good.
That's good.
That's so good. So, anyways, I know I just spent like 20 minutes rehashing this whole thing, and the only way I can sum this all up was the next morning, me waking up to a message from one of my boys at work, C Brown, who just simply said to me, sorry, he was on vacation and I think just returned back from vacation. And he just messaged me and simply said, "Are you in a Twitter beef with Michelle?" And he loves the challenge. He's been all in on the challenge. So that was just funny. I was like, no, but I don't know. I don't know what constitutes Twitter beef, but I don't know. But anyways, all of that we just found funny. I just wanted to rehash all that to one show that it's not that serious. I find it all fun, including the people making fun of me. Shouts to Michelle. Like, you know, you're putting yourself out there. You're on a television show. Not everything that people think that you're going to do, they're going to agree with. And that's totally fine. And like, there's no actual beef. Nobody's really mad. It's not that serious. It's all just jokes.
I mean, so I never got to reply to Michelle because I was in Oro Medante in a tent. But I had a couple thoughts. The first is, I think it's really important to not make fun of or insult someone for who they are, but what they do.
Ooh, I like that.
I think that's an important distinction. And I don't think we cross that line. I also think that, like, longtime listeners know, I've wanted to like Michelle. Like, when she first showed up on the show, I was intrigued.
Fans.
I wanted to see where it went. I thought she played really badly this season, and I think ball don't lie. And I also think that last episode, that's basically what we said. And in particular, what I recall, like, I didn't go back and listen, I know you did, but what I recall is that I said what I was disappointed in both Michelle and Jay was that in the fullness of time, because the reunion was filmed like 6 weeks after the show ended, that they didn't make the most of that time to reflect and say, geez, we didn't play our best game. And like, there was no growth that we saw from them. And that's where my disappointment was. And I'm pretty sure I said that last episode, whereas like, I would have liked to have seen Michelle and Jay be like, we got to get smarter and like sort of own their shit. So then when Michelle came at us, I was like, did she listen to us? Or was she just taking the original tweet's word on what we said? And we certainly didn't spend half the podcast last week. Today we have spent half the podcast.
Oh yeah.
But like last week, I don't know. I thought we talked about Tori and Jordan more. I think we talked about Nerese a lot. Like, we talked about a lot of other stuff.
We also talked about Jay and Laurel more than we talked about Michelle last week.
All this is to say, and I think we're going to disagree on this.
Okay.
I liked the second part of the reunion better than the first, specifically because I felt that in this one, we saw more of that growth from all the cast members that I'd been hoping to see in the first reunion episode, including from Michelle and Jay. Jay didn't really talk this one, but like when Michelle in this episode is talking to Fessy and talking to Nani, this is the side of Michelle I wanted to see. I wanted to see the Michelle who had said, yeah, I was really upset that day. I had, in her words, a Michelle down. and I overreacted. And Nani owned her issues and said, when I watched back our interaction where you were breaking down and I was just stone cold, she said, I'm paraphrasing, but that she was so lost in the grief about her mom that she couldn't empathize with anyone. That's what I wanted to see from Michelle and Jay last episode. And I enjoyed seeing it in this episode, not just from Michelle, not just from Nani, but I thought Jordan and Tori, Nerys, Anissa, Mariah, basically everyone except Fessy really owned their behavior. And like, that's what I wanted to see. Like, I like to see growth. And I think the most interesting and compelling people on this reality show or any reality show or any fictional show or any book is when there's growth, right? Like, I don't know that he's number one with a bullet, but I think it's fair to say CT is one of the most popular characters in challenge history. Mm-hmm. And the reason why we like him is because he has had such a clear growth as a human being. Like, he's become so much more mature, so much more thoughtful, so much less violent, right?
Yeah.
And so that was, like, I thought the main thrust of what I said last week and what I liked so much about this week's episode.
And I'm going to back you up here too, right? Because I totally agree. I think that, what we saw was a level of authenticity. And if there's something that I can draw a correlation between the people that we rep on the pod and the people that we don't rep on the pod, is authenticity. And I think watching that conversation last week between Michelle and Laurel, we could all tell that they were really talking. Like, Michelle was talking, there's something underlying, whether it's about Fessy or whether it's about another dude, that really was the issue between the two of them, right? And like, for Michelle to kind of like tiptoe around that and make it into some whole other thing and like whatever, like, that's inauthentic, right? And that's what I thought was, or inauthentic.
Go with
You're the wordsmith
here.
You're the wordsmith here, John. I expect you to be able to help me out here. But my point is
inauthentic.
My point is, right? Sorry to put you on the spot as well.
That's
but
fine.
My point though is that this was a more authentic version of Michelle, I thought, in this episode. And even just a her and Nani conversation, it was, people are allowed to make mistakes. People are allowed to come back and say, hey, this is what I thought. And now with time, I've seen how now I think differently and I feel differently about that. And that is okay,
And you know what? To Trina's point, the original tweeter who she didn't really create this issue, but like her tweet got the ball rolling, was that like Laurel was pretty immature last week.
Which we said. Yes. Yeah. Totally.
Like, Laurel's response was not great. It's just that the original issue is Michelle's issue, and it's largely in her head.
And also, like, as we said, right, the thing with Laurel is Laurel owns her BS, right? And like, there's not a lot of, I find it rare, and I could be wrong. I'm sure there's moments where it has happened, but I don't think this was an instance where Laurel was trying to make herself the victim by any stretch of the imagination here, right? So anyways, let's continue here. There's a turbo thing that you skipped over, and I feel like you skipped over it for a reason.
I didn't mean to skip over it. I want to give you credit. You were right that Turbo wasn't actually going to show up. I thought the video he sent in was bizarre, and
to say the least.
And I really hope he doesn't come back. Like, I'm ready to close the chapter on Turbo.
I just don't get it. I didn't get the bit. I didn't understand if he was like trying to do a comedic bit or if he was being like if the whole thing was a bit or if he actually like dislikes these people and was trying to like diss them, like, was the bit self-deprecating at all? Like, I'm making fun of myself, making fun of them, or does he actually think like, this is a funny video, I'm really funny, I'm dissing them, ha ha ha?
Well, to my original point, I think, there was a lot to dislike about how Turbo conducted himself this past season. But I think the most problematic thing was when he was arguing with Nani, who had, to that point, always been good to him, always been a true friend.
Facts.
he stood up in an attempt, I'll be generous, to physically intimidate her.
Mhm.
And she told him to sit down.
Yeah.
This would have been the opportunity for Turbo to be like, you know what? I shouldn't have done that. Nani, I was heated. I shouldn't have been so rude to you. You're a good friend. Instead, he took a shot at Nani.
Yeah.
And like, he can be mad at others for sure. He shouldn't be mad at Nani. And the fact that Turbo is so worked up and unable to own his own shit and apologize for things or take things back or at least explain where he's coming from, like, don't love it.
So
Also don't love the trying to physically intimidate a woman. Not into
yeah,
that.
that wasn't cool at all. And the one thing I didn't get was Tori at the end saying like she really liked that and she wants to work with him.
I think she was being sarcastic.
She needs to do a better acting job because I was just confused. But
Yeah, that's fair.
The Fessy and Mariah. You mentioned Fessy. I mean, Fessy and Mariah beef, or was it more Anissa and Mariah beef, which I didn't know was even a thing because that was like a revelation that came up in all of this.
Yeah.
But is there a side to be taken? Like, is there people who are defending Fessy?
I think there is. I mean,
Okay.
I think an important thing about the internet in general is that there's always someone that's going to back someone who is seen as not defendable. Like, if I don't know how active you are on the Challenge Talk Facebook group,
No,
but there are people who
I don't even post a pod there. I forgot about that group.
There's people there that rep him hard. Like, someone took a shot at Horacio recently and said that he was just like a poor man's Fessy, and everyone's like, "LOL, what?" Like, and like, I mean, that's a classic example.
Mm-hmm.
I think that
Yeah,
also that the internet creates where it's like this dichotomy where like if you're not with me, then you're against me,
for sure.
and like I don't think I hope, I'm sure there's someone who dislikes him, but like Horacio in my mind is the opposite of Fassel. Like, surely everyone likes Horacio. Like, there's really, he he wasn't as respectful of Laurel as he should have been, but even she seems cool with him after this.
Mm-hmm.
And like, but still there's someone that took a shot at him on this Facebook group and said, oh, he's a poor man's Fessy. Like, Fessel should aspire to be like Horacio, right? Like,
You know what's interesting? In one of the comments that I didn't read because I couldn't, like, there were a lot of comments that I just scrolled past, but I remember seeing a comment before that was accusing, like, they said that, and I'm paraphrasing here, but they listened to the pod and they said that what happened was I've become way more mean, and I only like the women on the pod if they're, or on the show if they're attractive, which I honestly took offense to because I feel like we are, first off, equal opportunists in terms of talking about the attractive cast, both men and women. Also, I will say on this season, I feel like Anissa, we talked about a lot, and I would not say that I am attracted to Anissa. I would also say I'm not attracted to Olivia, and we talked about them a lot on this pod. So I don't know. And I even thought that Olivia and Horacio were like the favorites to win this whole thing. But I just found that as a weird comment. But what I'm saying that to say that I feel we project certain things on other people. And so, Fessy is a good looking guy. So I'm sure there's a lot of women who are team Fessy, right? Like, as we found out later, because it was my line of the episode for sure. But Johnny, when he was talking, when they're having the back and forth, and I know I'm skipping ahead here, but
you
like
can skip ahead.
When Johnny said to, I forget who it was that was making the comment about, Fessy, you got to be honest and like, be more forthcoming with what your intentions are and all that. And Johnny simply said, but ladies, you got to remember, you're dealing with a guy whose name is Messy Fessy.
Yeah.
Right. I just thought that was so perfect. Right. But I say all that just to say, listen, it's a reality TV show, right? They hire people to be on the show. They cast people to be on the show based off their looks. We talk the most about loving the show for the fact that there's so many different aspects to the show that we love and enjoy. If there
I
were
also I also gotta point out that like I clearly the cast member I objectify the
is
most.
Horacio, or no,
It's
you is
Devin.
Devin. It's Devin.
So I mean, in fairness, the Reddit poster did not make that comment about me.
Fair enough.
in,
Fair enough.
in fairness, everyone knows where my biases lie.
Fair enough. Nice segue too. I appreciate that. I always appreciate a good segue. What was next? What was going on next?
Well, so next up, and I already touched on this, was they I did want to talk about something. Sorry, one more thing about Fessel and Mariah.
Mhm.
Apparently, when Mariah was sick, Fessel said, "Not my partner, not my problem."
Yeah,
That's super fucked up.
it is.
That is fucked up. And like
I
I
feel
don't
like
know how. I know, like I said, I know there's people who like Fessel. I don't know how. Like
I,
that's such a shitty thing to say.
I also feel like anytime you're in any situation and you're saying, I don't remember saying that,
Yeah.
but I could have said that, you probably said that. Am I
Yeah.
wrong there? You know, and I
No.
feel like Fessy had a bunch of these moments where he was kind of like his voice was even kind of wavering at certain points.
Mhm.
You know what I mean? Where you could tell that my guy was uncomfortable. He was like ducking and dodging, you know, like he was bobbing and weaving out of some conversation in some tight spots. And Nerys was like, no, no, no. You said that to me. I remember you said that to me because I'm the one that came and told you that she wasn't feeling well. And that was your response to me.
I I gotta say I really like Nerys. I thought Nerys handled herself well.
But again, straight shooter.
Yeah. I just in general, I think we can sort of combine these next two sections.
Of course.
But as I already alluded to, I was really impressed with how mature everyone was. Like they went to Michelle, like Maria Menounos through to Michelle to be like, you know, you had this big meltdown, and fans were surprised to learn that you considered Nani to be like a sister when they hadn't really seen you two interact previously.
Mhm.
And Nani, I thought to her credit, stepped up as like, you know what, Michelle, let me take this.
Yeah.
This was on me, and defended her. And like they had I thought a very warm and genuine interaction where they discussed their friendship, and Nani owned her behavior and said, you know, I was so grief stricken that I couldn't make space for anyone, which was something you and I spoke about earlier when there was that moment where Nani said that like no one has her back. And I was like, that's really sad to hear, because we can name all these instances where people have reached out to her. It was when Casey got eliminated, and she's like, Casey's the only one who had my back. I was like, I don't know. Johnny's been pretty good. I'm sure Kenny's been great. And then we once again revisited the Jordan and Tori situation, and I was braced for it. Like I was like, oh, this again? But they thought they had a very, I think, kind interaction. And Anissa weighed in a little bit, Laurel weighed in a little bit, Devin very slightly weighed in. But it seems like everyone involved, either directly or tangentially, I can't say that word tonight. Tangentially, got it. Um, related to the Jordan Tory dynamic, I thought were really like kind, and it seems like they're all good with each other, like have sort of agreed to give each other space. I liked what Jordan said when he said that, like, when he arrived and saw Tori, it was the scariest moment in his challenge career. And like I thought they spoke with a lot of kindness and respect, and like it seems like they're all in a great place. And I just like this whole interaction. Like this is, in my personal life, this is like where I wish I could often get in a lot of my like beefs with people.
So I'm gonna totally again just agree with you here, and the reason is because we're coming back to the authenticity of it, right? And I think that, you know, with the Michelle and Nani thing, you can tell that the key there, and this is a thing for everything Michelle does, so I want to make this very clear. There's no malicious intent with
No.
any of the negative things that um or perceived negative things that she's done or said on the show, right? Like this is a thing where we have an understanding that it's a reality show. You have people coming on TV, and something someone told me a long time ago about just being on TV, and even though it's talking about broadcasting and not being on reality TV, I feel like it's still like the point remains. And it was, it'll take you a while to figure out yourself on TV, meaning who you are on TV, who you want to be on TV, right? Because you have yourself, who you are, and you're trying to be that person and remain that same person on TV, but it's just different, right? You have to then figure out who it is that you want to be on television. And I think with, you know, when we're talking about someone who's coming off as fake or not authentic, it's because you can tell that they're, you know, they're trying to play all sides, you know, they're trying to just be super nice. And I think in this scenario, both of these conversations that we put together here, you have people that you can see that they had authentic interactions where, you know, Nani and Michelle being able to bond over both experiencing recent loss, right? Like that is a real thing. And we could see that in this conversation with Jordan and Tori. The part that really got me was seeing how emotional the other castmates were. And that
Yeah.
showed me that, you know, I was wrong in some of the things that we said earlier this season, because it made me think that there was probably way more that we never saw. You know, there were things that these other people in the house saw between Jordan and Tori that made it more of a real situation in terms of like the roller coaster ride that they must have been on, in terms of them being together for an extended period of time for the first time, and then have that be on TV and trying to win money.
I gotta
Right?
say, also, like, I really like how they both put it, because it's a good reminder, especially what Jordan said. I would not want to be in that situation with any of my exes,
Mhm.
of which there are many. Um, I I would not want to
Mhm.
be in either of their shoes.
Mhm.
I should also add, Nerys said, you know, her wording more or less was that she doesn't regret what she did, but if she had to do it over again, she would not, and that she and Jordan just would have been friends.
Yeah.
It's just like it was.
And
I just
everyone seems like they're cool.
Yeah, it seems like it was just a really great, like, healthy interaction for all those people. Darrell was crying, which made me cry. Like, it was, it was
I
a
have a
lot.
question for you though.
Mhm.
So we saw that Tori and Nerys are cool. Jordan and Nerys are still cool. Everyone's cool. But Tori says that she would still pick Devin as her ride or die.
Yeah,
Is that real? Do
yeah.
you think that she would win with Jordan, or would they bicker too much?
I don't think they'd be able to win together.
Okay.
I think they'd be too distracted. Don't you?
Yeah, no, for sure. I mean, I could definitely see the arguments getting in the way for sure.
And also, like, they've been on teams together before when they were a happy couple and they did not both win.
Yeah, Jordan won only, right?
Yeah. It was one of the War of the Worlds. Tori got
War of
left
the
behind.
Mhm.
Um, but undeniably, Tori, when she's partnered with Devin, wins.
I'm just gonna let that one go.
It's a fact.
Next up,
I'm
we're
just
to
saying facts. I'm just saying facts, Sheldon. It's, you can't deny that.
I will not deny the facts, man.
Thank you.
Um, there are a bunch of hookups. We get a hookup montage: Nerys and Johnny, Laurel and Horacio, Nelson and Olivia, Michelle and Fessy, Laurel and Fessy, Fessy and Colleen, Fessy and, I mean, yeah, basically everyone. But um,
There's only
the
one of these that I want to talk about.
I want to dig into Fessy a little bit here,
Okay.
because I feel like and again, it's tough because obviously we know these are like 3-hour conversations that they like edit down,
Hmm.
but they couldn't have just let my guy slide with his explanation about bouncing around to all these women. And he's like, I feel like guys make a mistake where, you know, sometimes they're too quick to jump into something seriously, and, you know, you move too quickly. And so I kind of just like to, you know, sit back and see how things go and not really commit too quickly. And I feel like that's very different, my dude. right? Like jumping into something with one person, I feel like that's a very different scenario than being in the house with multiple different people and then trying to get with multiple different people at the same time in the same house. That is why he is messy Fessy. But I just thought like his explanation of how he tried to like explain that off as if like, no, other guys make mistakes, other guys make mistakes by trying to jump into things too quickly. Whereas I'm just like playing the field, trying to like make sure. It's like, that's what you're rolling with, bro. Right? Like, come on, man. What are we doing here?
The one I want to talk about was Nelson and Olivia.
Yeah. I got
Nelson,
thoughts.
you and I have in the past been quite hard on Nelson. Deservedly so. I'm not about to walk back the things we've said about Nelson.
No, there was a full season where we did a segment that was just simply say something nice about Nelson.
Yeah.
Because it was very hard at that point to say something nice about Nelson.
And I don't want to give him full marks here because I think he still has growing to do as a person.
For sure.
But I commend the fact that I think he is trying to grow. And like he is trying to, in his words, he was a boy and now he's a man. He spoke about how he felt it was unfair that Olivia was judging him on who he used to be rather than who he is, and just things she'd seen on TV and what she'd been told by friends. I think, though, that in his upset at being rejected by her, that he wasn't hearing what she was saying, and that it wasn't necessarily about him, but just that she needs to be single in general for a while. It sounds like she's coming to terms with the fact that she's a serial dater and that she needs to work on herself before she's ready to be with anyone else. But he's so caught up in his guilt and shame about who he used to be and the embarrassment and hurt of being rejected that he's not actually hearing her. He's just hearing his pain. But I did like that he is maturing.
Yeah, I think for the two of them, they're just in two different stages of their life, right? Like Nelson, like I think Olivia was okay to come on the show, have a hookup, and have it just be that. Like it didn't have to be anything more than that. Didn't have to be anything less than that. It is what it is. I kind of like this guy. We're hanging out. We're both in the house. We're having fun. Cool. Nothing wrong with that. It's reality TV. Two consenting adults. They're grown-ups. Nothing wrong with that at all, right? More power to you. I think Nelson, though, was in this world where in his mind, he was like, oh no, I like this girl a lot. Like, I want her to be my girlfriend. Like, we're going to settle down. He might be what Fessy was trying to explain off, right? Mm-hmm. But I say all that, all joking aside, to be like, we also talked about this on the pod, right? Like initially when Olivia was first on the show, I wasn't sure, but I was putting up some caution flags about how maybe she might not have the same intentions as Nelson.
Yeah.
Maybe, it might be good for her in terms of getting screen time, being with someone who is an established person on the show, coming in as a newcomer. Maybe she was into doing it for the gram. All of these things, right? And hey, I don't know. This is my perception as a dude just watching from my couch. But what I thought was very interesting was everything you said was true about Nelson, right?
Mm-hmm.
But the one thing he kept alluding to, oh, she was saying things about what her friends told her and who he used to be and all that stuff. But then he talked about, she said, about how she got a lot of advice from Anissa and Tori, who advised her how good it is for her to be alone. And I thought, that's very interesting. One, I'm not sure if I would want my girlfriend getting her advice from Anissa and Tori. I'm just going to say that, and I'll let people just, do with that information as you may. Two, I'm going to say this, okay? I found it very weird that I'm connecting dots here, right? But Nelson said, you're judging me based on things you've heard from your friends. She's saying, I got good advice from Anissa and Tori. As we watch this episode continue, and we're hearing more and more from Nelson, and people are like, oh, Nelson's such a good guy. And then even the Nelson and Fessy stuff. You could see the cutaways to Anissa and Tori both being like, oh, yeah, Nelson, you're great. Nelson, you're the man. And I'm watching that and thinking, isn't this interesting? So you're sewering my guy to his girl, but now on the reunion, you want to be like, oh, yeah, Nelson, you're the best. Oh, Nelson, da-da-da. And like, I understand that those two things are allowed to exist. I understand that, right? You can think that Nelson is maturing and he's a good guy, and you can also still think that he's not a good boyfriend. All of those things can exist. I was just looking at that kind of sideways, like, interesting.
I do think you're making an assumption. I would think that if Nelson was speaking specifically about Olivia's friends Tori and Anissa sewering him, that he would say their names.
Okay.
So like it's not necessarily them.
Okay.
And again, I also think though that the emphasis isn't necessarily that Nelson's the wrong guy for her, but rather she needs to be single.
For sure. Totally.
And like I think that like we catch that he said there's like a moment in the hallway.
Oh yeah,
which seemed like a little staged. Like that was weird, but
no, I think if you could tell what was going on, they were having a conversation, and whoever it was that the camera first pops up on, they're directing the camera guy to like, yo, get this conversation. So I didn't think it was staged, because the reason I didn't think it was staged was because Nelson was very calm until the very end, where I feel like he tried to then like get her, right? Because he was like, you ghosted me. And he said to her, like, oh, I was supposed to come meet you in Alaska, right? Remember that? And she's like, yeah. And then you ghosted me, and then you changed your mind. But then all of a sudden you went to LA, and then you went to this place, and then you went to this place. You became a city girl. And I was like, whoa. And at that point, that was one. City girl is like, I'm not pretending to be cool, but my assumption is, in internet lingo, city girl is like, the city. I'm gonna stop myself, because I'm gonna just embarrass myself
city girl
by trying to sound cool.
I just looked up what city girl means on Urban Dictionary. One of the definitions uses a word that I'm not comfortable saying under any circumstances a lot. Another one I don't think is the way he intended it. And the third meaning that comes up is implying that she is promiscuous.
I was going to say promiscuous girl. That's what I was going to say.
So, but like, I want to backtrack. So
I think that's unfair of him to say to her.
I think
like not cool. And you can't say that on camera. You can't say that as if you're having a serious conversation with her and then drop that at the end. That is an immature move from Nelson.
And again, I think Nelson's missing the point. She'd invited him to Alaska and then rescinded the invitation. He's taking that personally. And I do think, just like one like constructive criticism of Olivia, she maybe should have been more clear to him with what was going on. If he's telling the truth that she ghosted him, ghosting's not cool. But also, she's allowed to change her mind.
Totally.
She's allowed to say, like, you know what? Like, I was there at one point. I'm not there now. So I don't want you to come to Alaska and meet my family. Like, that's fine. She's entitled to do that.
1000%. And this is why I think this part wasn't staged, because I feel like Nelson almost took away all of the goodwill that he earned from the show, like on the show, like sitting there in like the normal setting. He almost lost all of that goodwill in that moment behind the scenes. Well, and I feel like if he was still like on, like trying to be like, oh, I'm the good Nelson, I'm this, I'm that, he would have like stayed with that same narrative, that the same energy that he had, on the show, on the set.
Yeah, well, and this is sort of ties back to my earlier point. I do think Nelson's matured. I don't think he's all the way there. Not that you can ever
No,
get all the way there, but like he clearly still has work to do. He's just better. Like, let's not, break our arms patting him on the back. He still has work to
exactly.
do.
Nelly, no. Nelly,
Um,
no.
then I mean, I think the final thing I wanted to speak about was Amber discussing her diagnosis of being autistic, which I don't know about you, but I had a lot of feelings. First of all, the first thing I thought was, oh man, I feel bad about a lot of the things I've said about Amber in the past 2 seasons. This
Mhm.
diagnosis explains so much. And I used to work with autistic children, typically autistic boys, and it presents itself differently in different age groups and by gender. And I feel really bad with how hard we've been on her about being fake in
Mhm.
this context, and understanding that autistic people often, because they're neurodivergent, don't know how to read social cues. They tend to mirror people. It explains why she's always sort of struck people as weird, or like had a hard time relating to people. Like, it all makes sense. And
Yeah.
like, I loved how the cast rallied around her. And I hope that with this diagnosis, she has like eventually comes to a place where she feels better about herself. And I feel so bad about some of the things we've said.
Mhm.
Um, it's yeah, I feel terrible.
Yeah, and I will obviously second that with you as well, and I kind of think that, it was so tough to hear her talk about all of those things on the show and in public because how difficult that must have been for her, and also like commend her for having the strength to be able to do that, right? Because it's also probably helping someone else who could be watching who's dealing with similar things that they might not really understand, but you might be, okay, maybe I'm going to go check this out or get tested or see, like someone could be sitting there listening to what she's saying and being like, oh, wait a second, I relate to a lot of those things. Like,
Yeah.
could that be me as well? But I also think it's an important thing because as we, talking about autism and talking about the autism scale, I think it's also an important reminder in terms of just how, I guess, like just the vast majority of different ways that it shows. Do you know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
most people think of when you hear that, you have a certain viewpoint of a specific viewpoint of what this person is or looks like or whatever. And I think that this was an important reminder for a lot of people. But I mean, as you said, I totally agree with you. For us, for me, that like you don't really know what someone else is really dealing with, and it goes back to what you were saying before about talking about what someone does as opposed to who someone is, right? And understanding the difference between those things, but also then giving it the next level of, again, you don't know what someone else is really going through. And to hear that, it was really tough, because it was really sad. And also I just think, commending her for being able to share her story like that, that couldn't have been easy. And,
Hmm.
I definitely applaud her for sharing that in that forum because she doesn't have to do that. Do you know what I
No.
mean? But she's choosing to do that to build on the relationship that she has with the people on this show, but also knowing that she has a lot of fans, a lot of people that support her, a lot of people. And then even like the flip side of that, right? Like the people who might not have been her fans, but now it's like you gain some understanding and the reminder that these are real people dealing with real issues and real life situations. And so again, I applaud her for having the courage to, get help. You know what I mean? And also to share her story.
I mean, I think it's important to note that her experience is very common. More often than not, men are diagnosed with autism or autism spectrum disorders than women.
Mhm.
And typically, that doesn't mean that there's more men with autism. Just we're talking about how many have been diagnosed. And also, women are typically diagnosed in adulthood, like Amber. I also have one of my oldest friends. We've known each other since we were in kindergarten, and she told me in the past year that she was diagnosed with autism, and we're
Mhm.
nearly 40. So she went through ultimately what will likely be most of her life, not knowing that she was autistic. And one of, I think, the beautiful things about the challenge is the cast is very diverse. Obviously, there's a lot of racial diversity, but also they have had a physically disabled person in Jordan. They now have a neurodivergent regular cast member in Amber, notably both champions. They've had a non binary person in Ammo. They've had a transgendered woman in Caitlin. Like, there are not a lot of reality TV shows that I think can claim all those things.
Mhm.
And they're not tokens either,
Yeah.
right? Like, they're brought on because they're interesting, they're cool, they're entertaining, they're competitive, right? So I think I don't want to say a credit to the challenge, but it's one of the things I love about the challenge. Like, I don't want to, again, congratulate the producers on this, but I think it's a great thing. And to your point, maybe Amber disclosing her diagnosis will help other people. And at the very least, they'll be like, hey, that person has won a reality TV show and won tons of cash. I forget how much she won. I can do whatever I need to as well, whatever I want to as well. So I thought that was pretty cool.
Yeah. And it's just a learning experience, right? Like I think that it's just another example of the different levels that this show hits. It can be
Mhm.
fun, it can be jokes, it can be scary, it can be serious, it can be real, it can be a learning experience. And all of that is all of the reasons why we love this show.
Where can the good people find you on social media?
Well, you can find me on Twitter at Shell Alexander and on Twitter, or sorry, on Instagram at Sheldon Alexander. And of course, like and subscribe to the pod wherever you get your podcasts. And same thing for the YouTube page and the Twitch stream. Bless us with a like. Tell your friends. We read the comments, we see the comments. And as posted earlier, I mean, as we read earlier, we're here for it all the smoke, good and bad. Here for it, love it, appreciate it all. Really, genuinely do appreciate it all. The community that is the You Killed It podcast.
Yes. And on that note, we got a very nice comment from someone who
Oh,
messaged me. Her name is Chris Kruger.
okay.
Chris writes, I love You Killed It. I'm not great on the socials, but want to let you know how much your podcast helps me. My husband and I used to watch all the challenges together, but he died of a massive heart attack at 52, right before the end of Double Agents. So you and Sheldon have given me a sort of discussion about the show that I miss.
Wow.
Yeah,
Wow.
super nice. Thank you so much, Chris, for listening. Really appreciate it. Chris and I continue to have a conversation about our personal grief and our personal loss. The Sheldon, I've mentioned it before, but about a decade ago, uh, 10 years and 1 month ago, my dad dropped dead of a heart attack. And so Chris and I were able to discuss that sort of in the DMs one to one. But we appreciate all our listeners, even if you don't disagree with us. Again, thank you, Chris, for listening. Thank you, everyone, for listening. And you can get at us, good or bad, online. I'm on Twitter and Instagram at jchidleyhill. But if you come at us hard, I also have to say, you better hope that I've got Twitter deleted that day because Sheldon is the nice one of us. Until next week, this is You Killed It.
You killed